Mr. Mike Sadofsky is from the Sudbury Valley School from the US, and it's a democratic school. And this is something that we're all very familiar with, right? And this is a class schedule, and as we all know, the bits that we look forward to every day is this part, and this part, and this part, and of course this part. So imagine if the school doesn't have this at all. What do they do? What do the students do? For that, I pass it over to Mr. Mike Sadofsky.
Thank you. I know we're running late, and I'll try to be as concise as I can here. And perhaps skip a little bit of the text that I've prepared. But I'm really going to be talking about something completely different from what you've been hearing the last few days and what you think about when you think of schools. The Sudbury Model, or more specifically, Sudbury Valley School, is a place where kids from 4 to 18 have a chance to grow and to learn before they step out into the adult world. I want to tell you a little bit about what happens there, why it happens, and what happens to these kids when they reach adulthood. I'm not going to show you any videos. I'm not going to show you any PowerPoints. I'm just going to talk, and mostly I'm going to read to make sure I cover what I want to cover. Sudbury Valley School came about in the 1960s. We've been doing for nearly 50 years some of what was talked about yesterday. The principal founders were struggling with questions about how they would school their own young children. They began to investigate schools and educational models and theories of learning, and unsatisfied, they went back to first principles and asked themselves questions like, what are schools for? Where do the ideas for schools come from? If kids learn to walk and to talk and to play, and for many to read and to write and to do many other things without a curriculum, without a teacher, without a school, then what's to stop them from continuing those same processes and becoming capable and responsible adults without the structures that society has put in a school system? Well, I won't try to answer those questions. There are more than enough books and articles by people with much more knowledge and expertise than mine who've written about the history of schooling, the role of religions and governments and industrialization in creating these school models that prevail all over the world. After a lot of study and discussion and planning and hard work by the principal founders, Drs. Dan and Dr. Hannah Greenberg, and the many others that became interested and helped make the idea a reality, Sudbury Valley School came to be. It opened its doors in 1968 and has been operating continuously since then. Over the years since then, others have adopted the model and adapted it for local needs. Today, there are similar schools across the USA, in Europe, in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in Germany, in Spain, in Israel, in Japan, and elsewhere. And if one wants to look for them, there are many others that were inspired by Sudbury Valley School, but for a variety of reasons, adapted the model for their own purposes and constraints. The schools that follow the model have generically come to be called Sudbury schools, although each is an independent enterprise. We don't vet them, we don't inspect them, we don't authorize their use of the name or negate their use of the name. And there's now a group of people here in Hong Kong who are beginning to express their interest in the Sudbury Valley model and I'll be meeting with them and exploring the model in more depth later in the week. So back in 1968, our intent was to create a place where kids between the ages of 4 and young adulthood could grow and learn and prepare themselves for the next phase of their lives. When they reach the age of majority, 18 years, a point when young people are typically ready to enter the workforce or pursue higher education, to go on to college or university, or to learn a specific trade. This intent is not any different from what any school might say. The difference lies in how we go about it. Sudbury Valley School doesn't impose an agenda on its students. We don't have any curriculum. We don't have any particular expectations that, for example, our students will learn this or that or something else. We don't expect that they will all attend college or university, that all will become professionals or white-collar workers or anything else in particular. We accept the idea, actually we embrace the idea, that each of our students has unique interests, unique capabilities, and yes, even unique capacities to achieve. A casual visitor at SVS, Sudbury Valley School, SVS, a shorthand way of referring to it, will often have two main observations. They say, gee, I see a lot of play. I see a lot of kids talking to one another. I don't see a lot of studying or learning going on. What they mean, I think, is that they don't see kids with books and worksheets, with pencil and paper, doing the kinds of drill activity that is so often associated with school. They don't see classrooms with kids at desks and a teacher standing before them and leading the kids through a lesson plan. What they do see are kids of mixed ages in groups of 2, 3, 4, and more, in all sorts of informal settings and seemingly casual behavior. On the fields, in the sand pit, on the swing set, near the pond or the brook, at the rocks, in the barn, in the school's main building, in room after room. They may be reading books and magazines and stories or news reports on the internet, together or individually. They may be playing music or listening to music or composing music or studying mathematics or chemistry or biology or painting and creating pottery and designing and sewing clothing and knitting and so forth. They may be playing ball games or fishing in the pond or any of the myriad kinds of activities that any of us might be involved with at any time of day or night, at work or at leisure. Music, art, computers, books, games, crafts, discussions, debate, anywhere people might gather to do something together that satisfies their common interests at the moment. Some have said it looks like recess at a more conventional school. But what's really happening under all this play and informality is a lot of interaction among kids. The play is unstructured and can take many directions and explorations. The conversation is far-reaching and draws on each kid's interests, backgrounds, influences that extend far beyond the school. Play and conversation, the talk and debate is constant, intense, and effective. And they are learning while they're doing all of this. Kids of mixed ages, kids from different backgrounds, different individual and family beliefs with regard to politics, economics, religion, social relationships, interests and skills, kids from diverse economic conditions, kids from different family structures, kids with different levels of knowledge and opinion about the matter under discussion. And this all goes into chatter and conversation and debate about a topic. The result is not schooling as we typically think of it, but it is learning and it is maturing. You can't see this. I can't see this. The casual observer doesn't see it, but it's taking place. The staff see it because they live with it and are frequently a part of it and can recognize the changes in individual kids as they learn and share their knowledge with others. There's no stopping it. It's productive, it's effective, and it's pervasive. How do I know? Many years ago, when my kids were first enrolled at Sudbury Valley School, I did what most parents do with kids at the dinner table. I'd ask, "What did you do today?" They'd answer, "Nothing." Or, "I played cards. I played basketball. I played piano." Or, "We had a school meeting." "Oh, that's interesting," I'd say. "What was it about?" "Nothing." Eventually, I learned how to get a little more information. We'd talk about something in the news of the day, and one of my kids would respond with a new perspective. "Where did that come from?" "Oh, Thomas said that," or "Billy." Another of my kids would add, "Well, I learned that's really not true because," and go off into another angle. And all of a sudden, it became so clear that they were absorbing so much more information than I had ever been exposed to in my years in conventional schooling. I stopped worrying about it. This perception has been reinforced over many years of conversation with my kids and their chums when they were students at Sudbury Valley School. And I hear about it now whenever I talk with older students and listen to what they have to say about their experiences. So, what makes a school a Sudbury school? I want to describe the characteristics of the Sudbury Valley School and what factors exist in common with other schools that call themselves Sudbury schools. And it's hard for me to do this, but in trying to get down to the core of our approach to the development of each student or each kid, I don't think I can use a better word than respect. Sudbury schools are based on respect for the individual, for his or her autonomy, individuality, his or her rights, independence, uniqueness, personal interests. Everything else stems from this concept. The child is a unique individual with a set of personal interests, personal ideas, thoughts, beliefs that may be different from those of others, and we as a school want to respect that individuality. What we expect from each and every student is the same respect for every member of the school community and for the school itself. So, at every Sudbury school, there are a community of equals. The kids participate in making the school rules, and to the extent they want to and are deemed capable of by their peers, they are also able to take on administrative and operational tasks and responsibility. There's no hierarchy, no headmaster, no headmistress, no principal teacher or principal administrator. The kids are free to spend their time as they want to. They can study, they can talk and play, as I've discussed. They can organize classes and lobby for instruction or for meetings with a knowledgeable person. There's no curriculum, no expectation that they will master this topic or that subject at a certain age or at any age. The school looks like a large, comfortably furnished home with many rooms that can be used for almost any purpose as the demand changes. There are no classrooms, no rooms with desk, row. They don't exist. There are rooms and spaces that can adequately house a group that wants to study and learn together. and spaces can be configured for laboratory purposes and other purposes. And other Sudbury schools are very similar. There's no age grouping. The 6-year-olds might spend time with the 10-year-olds. A teenager may be working in the art room next to a 4-year-old. A ball game outside will typically involve kids of many mixed ages, with the older kids looking out for the younger kids and making them part of the game. A seminar will always consist of a group that spans 10 years in age. Always. There's no segregation of students by age or any other factor. The adults at the school are called staff members. They're not teachers. Their jobs are multiple. The staff generally assume all of the various tasks associated with running an institution that need to be done. And by performing these tasks in a very professional manner, an expert manner, they serve as adult models to the students. They are chosen as staff members and elected to their designated areas of responsibility because they exhibit this professionalism. They function as experts in running the school as a business, in dealing with parents and with authorities, with the appropriate skills and sensitivities. And they see that all the purchasing and contracting that supports the school is done professionally and with expertise. They are not hired as teachers, but they do have a depth of knowledge in the typical academic disciplines and are available to serve as resources to students. And when there's a need for a specialist that can't be covered by the existing staff, we'll go outside and bring someone in as a consultant in that specific area. Sudbury schools operate as democracies. Every member of the community may discuss, raise questions, and expect answers, and vote on every matter that needs to be decided to operate the school. Who should be hired for staff? Our staff have no tenure. They're hired on one-year contracts. Once a year, the meeting gets together, the entire school gets together and discusses and decides and negotiates contracts for the following year with the staff candidates that they choose to hire. Who should be hired for staff? What salary should be paid? What tuition should be charged? How do you balance the books? How do you bring in enough money to maintain the building, to pay the salaries? The kids are part of this process. What rules should be established to keep the school safe and clean and maintained? The kids are part of this process. The students and staff, each one as an individual, has the same voice in discussing these issues and in voting to reach a decision. So if the 4-year-old goes into this meeting and wants to vote, that 4-year-old has the same vote as the senior staff member who's voting to maintain a contract with him or her. What you find is a heterogeneous collection of young people exploring the world both individually and in groups, and doing so physically, intellectually, socially, academically, whatever ways you can imagine. They're taking advantage of a wide variety of resources to do so. They use books, and we staffed the school from the get-go with books in probably every room. They use the internet now. We're a small school. We buy our internet services through a nonprofit corporation that's chartered to support schools in Massachusetts. Within 2 years of signing the contract with them, our small school was using more internet bandwidth than any other school in Massachusetts. Our kids are clamoring for information and finding it. They use the school staff as resources. They use fellow students as resources. They use community resources, colleges, libraries, museums, nature preserves. And as I mentioned earlier, if we don't have the expertise and we need it, we'll go out and get it and bring it in on contract. One more thing, no tests, no exams. I lost a page. No evaluations. No tests, no exams, no evaluations of learning or of knowledge. Our students follow their own interests. They strive for their own goals. If they want to, they evaluate their own progress or learning or accomplishment. The school doesn't measure them. These are the factors that differentiate Sudbury Valley School and Sudbury schools from most other schools. No curriculum, no classroom, no teachers, no tests, democratic governance, no age segregation. Some people like to call us a democratic school. Well, we are that, but there are so many schools that call themselves democratic that vary in where democracy is applied and not applied that I don't like to use the term. So I'm just going to skip beyond that. Let me drop back to that word respect that I introduced a few minutes ago. I think this is the best way to describe the culture that exists at Sudbury Valley School and at all Sudbury schools. To establish a culture of respect and to maintain that is a difficult thing to accomplish. Let me repeat what I just said earlier, that kids are co-equal members of the school community. They're free to pursue their interests, to develop their individual characteristics and their individual personalities, as long as their activities do not interfere with the ability of others to do the same. So you can do whatever you want. Just don't impose yourself on somebody else's freedom. Respect them. Now, our absence of a curriculum is part of this culture of respect. Do what you want, pursue your interests. Another way in which kids are shown respect is that they are assumed able to hold adult conversations. The adults don't talk down to the kids. They talk to the kids pretty much as equals. You know, they're not going to demand of them knowledge of a vocabulary that's beyond them, but they're going to discuss things with them on simple terms and appropriate terms. Debate is never watered down so that kids can get it. It's discussion and debate among equals, and kids do get it. They learn to understand the same level of conversation that you and I might have, and this gives them power. They are equals, and they know it. So how does this all work? There are two organizational structural elements, let me call them that, within the school. First of these is the school meeting. This is the forum where business matters are dealt with. Finances, budgets, expenditures, staff hiring, and firing decisions sometimes. Election of clerks, designated people to deal with ongoing activities, administrative matters, rulemaking. So once each week on a Thursday afternoon, a meeting is called to order by the elected chairperson to discuss, debate, and vote on all such matters. There's a written agenda prepared beforehand. Everybody has it. All the students and staff members are voting members of this school meeting. That newly enrolled 4-year-old can come in and vote, and the most senior member of the elected staff, each an individual voice and an individual vote. The chairman and secretary of the school meeting have, for most of the school's existence, been roles filled by students. They're elected to serve for 1 year. The meeting is run fairly formally in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order, which I guess is a US-based system for handling a parliament. Speakers are recognized by the chair and afforded an opportunity to address the topic of the moment. And I already told you that there's an agenda. So it's really an amazing parliament. So the second element I want to mention to you is what we call the Judicial Committee. You got a bunch of kids, you got a bunch of rules, you're going to have conflict. Any group of people, there'll be disagreements from time to time, and we need a way to resolve them. With a couple of hundred people in the school building every day, and most of them young people, conflicts do arise. The Judicial Committee, or JC as they refer to it, is the mechanism at Sudbury Valley to resolve conflicts and infractions of school rules. 8 people, 7 students, and 1 staff member meet in a designated room to address allegations of rule breaking. They function sort of as a combined investigative body and a judge. I don't know, do you have a grand jury in Hong Kong? It's like a grand jury and a judge. It determines whether something happened that was in violation of the rules, who is responsible, and what resolution is appropriate. Sometimes things turn out to be spurious. Some may be resolved with an apology, others with banishment from an area for a day or 2 days. Sometimes it's a serious issue. All of the findings of this committee are subject to review by the larger school meeting. But it's within the JC and the school meeting that the culture of respect that I talked about a few minutes ago is made real. It's the Judicial Committee process and actions that put practical meaning to a major school rule that reads, and I quote this, "No one may knowingly interfere on anyone's right to be at school free of verbal or physical harassment." I guess I have to speed things up. Academics. How do kids learn about numbers and how to manipulate numbers? One of the things we do at school is we run a little bank internally. Kids have to buy things, groups have to buy things, money has to move from here to there. We needed a system for people to be able to buy and pay for specialized materials, even daily snacks. We authorize a little snack store that a couple of kids run and pay a commission to the school for the right to do it. They make money and they take care of that need. Kids have to pay for this. There's a banking system. The kids deposit money with the school. They can buy their candy bar or soft drink or snack or art supplies by drawing on this and writing a check. And the 4-year-olds, within 2 weeks, are writing checks and spending money and knowing how much money they've got and knowing how to add it and subtract it. The school, like any bank, reconciles the bank deposits and transactions every night through the computer. It's not a big deal. Oh, I want to read this. I don't want to miss this. A former student, now at university, wrote a little paper recently, and he said, when I was still a kid at Sudbury Valley, a staff member would often ask me a question I never really knew how to answer. She'd ask, Jesse, how did you develop such good language skills? You have such a large vocabulary. Where did you learn it? I never knew how to reply other than, I don't know. I just picked it up. Now, as a student of linguistics and cognitive science, I have a theory to answer that question. And what he says is, if most children grow up in environments where everyone talks to them in simplified, constrained grammar, under the assumption that they aren't smart enough to understand, and only ever gives them direction like, sit down, and this is on the test, then perhaps it would have a similar effect as in the use of pidgin languages. The children aren't being given enough data in pidgin languages to properly analyze all the different aspects of their language's syntax, so their command of language stays quite limited. Jesse's theory is his language skills came from being in an environment where people weren't afraid to talk to him as an equal, despite his being 7 years old and them being 45. Graduates. We're authorized in Massachusetts by the state and our local school board to offer a high school diploma, a secondary diploma. Well, in a school that prides itself on individual responsibility and self-assessment, this is a bit of an anomaly. But the diploma is seen as a rite of passage in America. And most of our kids and their parents want this, so we found a way to do it. It took us a long time and a number of iterations, but the candidate who wants a diploma argues his case before a panel of strangers. We bring in staff members from, 3 staff members from other Sudbury Model schools who don't know the candidate, but do know the system. And the candidate doesn't know them. And we tell the candidate that he has to convince these people that his experiences at school have enabled him to develop the problem-solving skills, the adaptability, and the abilities needed to function independently in whatever he declares is his next step in the world. Now, most of our kids go on to college, and most of them are able to prepare and complete that role. They earn their diplomas. A few don't make it. A few think they're smarter than everybody else, don't prepare for it, and can't answer the question, and they don't get their diploma. Our studies indicate that some 80 to 90% of our kids have gone on to college, often, and perhaps generally, in their first or second choice school. Our graduates do what they want to do. Doctors, lawyers, physical scientists, social scientists, writers, engineers, computer scientists, business managers, accountants, inventors, cooks, chefs, farmers, cartoonists, skilled trades people, woodworkers, automotive mechanics, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, builders, retailers, unskilled trades, truck drivers, stock clerks, and on and on and on. They're sought after by employers and schools of higher education for a reason. They come across as responsible people. They've grown up taking responsibility for their actions. They know who they are, what they want, and how to get it. They are articulate. They have reasoned arguments. They've learned how to organize themselves in groups to get things done. And these characteristics are apparent to strangers when they meet our kids. Our kids have never taken tests, so how do they prepare themselves for college tests? They just sit down, get a study guide, read it, find their weaknesses, go on the internet, and find the resources to teach them higher order mathematics if they need it, or whatever the need might be. The sources like Khan Academy and YouTube are fantastic, and there are many, many more. One of our graduates answered an interesting question that was asked of him this way. The question was something like this: shouldn't I worry about sending my kid to a school like this? And the response was, I'd worry more about sending my kid to a traditional school where for 12 years someone else decides what your kid is exposed to, what they should read, what they should study, what they should learn, and then sends them out into the world where they are then expected to make their own decision. That's something to worry about. And I'll finish with this. A colleague of mine, a widely published author and college professor, recently phrased it this way when he wrote, quote, children who are allowed to make their own choices in an environment where they have real choice and where those choices pertain to real life learn far more efficiently than children who are forced to follow a curriculum that seems irrelevant to them. I'm going to be talking in a couple of workshops later today and show some videos. And if you have questions, I'll be glad to try to address them then. Thank you.